Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lifting. Today's episode is being recorded on 6/21/25, the solstice, or the summer solstice, rather. So, this is going to be another Q&A. You're going to be seeing this after the conference. So, just know this was recorded beforehand, but there was a limit to how many I could put out before the conference. So, this one is being put out along with another one after. So, without further ado, the circle is now open to true benevolence with no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So, Joanna?
We are all one, and when one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, that only the highest good be done. We pray for you, your friends, your family, your loved ones, to let healing energies in. Let them love you, let them nourish you, and let them bring you to your highest good. We ask for benevolence now to come in with no conflicting agenda so that we may have this conversation in great understanding. And we ask for malevolent or mischievous type beings to be swept away right now so that we may have this conversation in peace. And with that, and with great blessings that we always send your way, we say, so be it.
And so be it. So this is now the first affirmation blessing. Yeah. Okay. Insanity is its own language. Speak it often and well, for it can never be understood, and therefore can never be defeated. Channeling a comedian and actor, Robin Williams. So, here comes the first question.
When asleep, does the spirit or soul usually leave the body, and when arising, slowly return? The reason I ask is that when awakening, first I urinate, then I weigh myself accurately. If I again weigh myself about 20 minutes later, having not consumed any food or liquids, I always weigh a few ounces more. This has happened more than about 60 times. So it's not just a rare accident.
Okay, this was actually quite interesting here. Isaac here, yes, you are seeing a real effect. When the spirit, light body self leaves to go do work in your sleep, you sometimes bring back extra weight with you from whatever the current mission was. When this occurs, it shows up as extra weight on the scale even after peeing. Energy work can take its toll on the body, and as such will cause extra weight issues that were not there before, as well as extra health issues over time, of course. The body processes this and creates what he here calls ghost poop, whereas the body processes extra energy weight and turns that energy into real waste, or in your case, extra physical weight, unless that transforms somehow into one big pile of shit. I hope this helps. Next question, please. Okay. And this was already answered in a previous Q&A about ghost poop, and he was elaborating on that. Of course, Isaac would be the one talking about poo. So, okay. Let's see.
Did John Wilkes Booth die in the barn at Garrett's farm?
This was Range 4 Harry that actually knows some historical stuff here, which was interesting. No, but he ended up in Mexico, then convoluted his story to make it seem as if he sired multiple lines. So did his buddies in the Knights of the Golden Circle. So, in conclusion, none, and I mean none, of the known stories about him are true. Remember, he was an actor. This means that he could play any role given to him. He survived the fire. James William Boyd died there. But Booth's story was intentionally scrambled by the Knights of the Golden Circle, so that that family could have the South rise again. Make sense? Bye for now. Range 4 Harry, which I found pretty interesting. Okay, next one.
Again, was Booth the sole assassin of President Abraham Lincoln, or was it the Knights of the Golden Circle?
Okay, and man, he went into Range 4 Harry really went into a long one here. Okay, it was the Knights of the Golden Circle. This group is still alive and well in the Deep South, and it is a cabal faction. Lincoln's family was as well, but he had a very different idea of how to proceed with country affairs. Similar to Carter in the fact that he, being a bit more outside the lines, if you get my meaning, was more slated for removal. Just like how your John F. Kennedy is considered to be, but there also remains the similarities between those two families. You have heard the stories of not only similar names such as Andrew Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson, but death dates, etc. These were and or are still are all staged. Meaning people have heard this online about the similarities between the two time frames and all the number synchronicities and everything. He's saying it's all staged, and I'm pretty sure he's right there. It's more of a psyops type of thing, a modern day psyops. This was another way to distract people from a much more simple truth, and that was, still is, that the Knights of the Golden Circle wanted to rise again. Well, they never actually went anywhere and or fell to be able to rise again, but it is what it is. In short, he did assassinate Lincoln, but had other co-conspirators on site with him. He didn't count on getting injured, nor did he think that he would survive to get home again. His words. Like Kennedy and Lee Harvey Oswald, the government, so to speak, did the deed. Layers upon layers. The man on the grassy knoll, etc. This is why the Smithsonian will not release his bones for testing. Citing the fact that they may ruin a historical artifact. It is, as you said, Chris, the information is more important than the artifact bones. And I've said this forever. The information is more of a lasting history than the bones themselves that will deteriorate. Adding to the informational database. This is also why they will not exhume his body from Greenmount Cemetery in Baltimore, Maryland. Layers upon layers, a scapegoat to focus on a legend made up, a man, a myth, a legend, one to create a mystery around. All the while, people never knowing the simpler truth of history, the much scarier truth. This is all that I know. Be seeing you around, Range 4 Harry. So, yeah, you have to go for the simpler one, not these over extravagant, convoluted pathways that keep sending you out. When Reagan did his channeling, he said, just keep it simple, stupid. Just keep it simple as to what you're looking for. They try to skew people off on these directions. Even if you hit a true thing, they'll take that true thing and skew it off into 1,000 different directions. You got to keep with what makes sense. That's essentially what he's trying to say. So, next one.
Was Jesse James a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle?
Yes, in fact, he was. He was not only protecting their gold, amongst other assets, but he robbed banks for the sole purpose of funding the movement. Authors like Robertus Love were tasked with turning Jesse into a legend, through which the Knights of the Golden Circle were hoping to get more public consent support for their cause, so that the South shall rise again. But it was not to be. It was not to be. Okay. As for the Golden Circle being the Kabbalist group being depicted in the Second Kingsman movie, the two distinct group types truly had nothing to do with one another. Essentially, is what they're trying to say. But they are factions, essentially. The movie version was more a satanic Kabbalist group, where the other was more interested in control cause over that of pagan god ritualistic leanings. This is all that I know. Range 4 Harry. What he basically was saying was essentially you're dealing with other factions that have different techniques, but it's essentially the same MO, just different ways of going about it. Different families, different strokes, different folks, essentially. We talk about different militaristic factions, that whole thing with the families that compete, Rothschild, Rockefeller, that whole bit. This is essentially what he was getting at. And we just happened to turn on an episode of the Y-Files, and who's he talking about? He's putting up pictures of John Wilkes Booth. So I see those little things, even those little things, if AJ's hearing this, it's these little things that are synchronicity, and it was an episode about synchronicities. So that's a double one, as far as I'm concerned. And I know the proper thing isn't the word synchronicity, it's more connection. I'm getting that before somebody wordsmiths this, but this is essentially what it is. It's connection. Essentially, you're all lining up connection, like what was said in Star Trek Next Generation. The character of Roxana Troy was telling some other person of some dreams he had about a woman he kept dreaming about and was drawing all the time. He goes, "Oh, humans think that this is prophecy, this is chance synchronicity, and just everything's connected." Is essentially what the character was saying. So, I'll go on the next one.
How do you know so much about our history, Harry?
It is simple. I was there. I participated in a multitude of your pre-colonial, earlier colonial, and post-colonial histories. I am quite old by human standards, at least 600 years young. I will talk more on this subject later on. Bye for now. Range 4 Harry. So, yeah, and he's known again in the Charles J. Hall and the Tall White story. He's that Range 4 Harry. So some of these beings are hundreds of years old. Even Charles J. Hall said some of the tall whites said that they could live between 600 and 900 years old. That could have seen all these histories. Like when you hear us talk about Thomas, for instance, he's one of these people, Tuatha De Danann, that would be still this group. And it could have fit the time that he could have been Shakespeare based on these timetables that Charles J. Hall spoke about. So just saying that one. Next one.
The question had to do with how long do your people generally live? I know some forest people that live that long and or older as well.
Okay. Between 175 to 800 years. Okay, 800 years. Barring disease, viruses, and or toxins. Bee stings included. Range 4 Harry. Now, what do you mean by bee stings is for the tall whites of Nellis. A bee sting could kill them. Essentially, because this is also why they were putting human genes in their people, so they had some kind of resistance build up here. And also, if you go with the Woodrow Derenberger material, visitors from Lanulos, Indrid Cold said they lived to about roughly to 175 to 200 years. So this is essentially the same story. It's just that you're getting variations on the same theme. So he went 175 to 800. So I've relatively heard between like essentially 175 and 8 to 900. So depending on whom you speak to that knows certain histories, he seems to be pretty knowledgeable. So okay, this one I am going to have to put a link up to show a picture. Briefly, I totally spaced on this part. So I will put this other URL up. This is creepy. So okay. All right, there we go. All right. Now I gotta share screen for this one. Okay. Be nice if I could. There we go. Oh. Okay, it's about these dolls right here, folks. So, and you're seeing this Labubu dolls, and this is actually the question. So, you saw that picture of the Labubu doll, and now I'll get back to reading this. That creepy little troll-like thing. Okay.
Have you seen these dolls called Labubu? They're marketed as a part of a series called The Monsters, designed by Hong Kong artist Cassing Lung. What I found is that the craze began when Rihanna was photographed with one attached to her handbag. They are incredibly popular now. What do they really represent? I personally don't care for them at all and feel they are opposite of what I do with my creations. Because this person actually makes things themselves.
Yeah.
Any information you can provide is appreciated.
Yes. And this person said I could say their name. This is Susan Claudino of No Knit Sherlock that creates her own dolls. So go check that out on Instagram. So, okay, who said this one? Okay, it was Isaac. Okay. These are exactly the opposite of your creations, Susan. These were designed as a surprise. As in, surprise, you just got bound to a satanic contract of pact without ever realizing it. This is why you saw Rihanna with the one first Hollywood and all. is what he was saying. The seat of satanic contracts and deals. Fugglers are up there with that as well, but not as potent of spells as Labubu dolls are. Labubu literally means binding. Watch for more for the surprise trend and avoid this trend at all costs. Follow and utilize other social media trends and posting algorithm trends, but not this one. So what he's meaning by surprise is, let's see, what did they call this on this thing over here? Okay. These aren't your regular stuffed toys. Pop Mart built a billion-dollar empire selling blind boxes, collectible toys. You don't even know you're getting until you open them. That element of surprise, it's turned into a global obsession. Here's why. Here's why this business model works. Excuse me. One, blind boxes tapped into the thrill of mystery, keeping fans coming back for more. Two, limited editions and scarcity create urgency and emotional investment. Three, Hot Mart didn't just sell toys, they sold collectability, building a brand that thrives on, I have no idea what FOMO means. If somebody knows, tell me, and fandom. Four, the resale market makes rare figures even more desirable toys into investments. Now, I'm not going to go on any further with that. I'll put a link in the descriptor, but what this is there can be beings bound to these. There's obviously spells bound to these. And what he was trying to say is this is a contract. And what better way to initiate a contract is to create a blind one like that. You open the box, you have one of these blind surprise things, and voila, you just got bound to something. I'm not saying this happens every single time, folks. I'm just saying this specific thing. And hope nobody from the company hears this and gets butthurt, but I don't care. I just wanted to get this particular thing up.
Quoted. That's from Isaac.
Yeah, and that's from Isaac too. So
I mean,
if you guys want to blame anybody, blame him. You can't sue him. So anyway, I put the explanation on there. I didn't need to open that. Okay, next one.
were Atlantis and Lemuria the very civilization, just from two different points on the timeline?
Very same civilization is what that was supposed to say. No, this is not true. Blank name, I'm not going to say the person's name, actually was looking more at the dragon break of Atlantis, meaning the shattering of dimensionally with the nuclear weapons. Then was told by other beings that both were the same, by other beings, that both were the exact same civilization. Just one was the past and one was the future, kind of like a Doctor Who thing on the same time stream kind of thing. That's it. That's for now anyhow. I have actually seen, I've heard this before, and I fell into this too. I thought they were different points on the time stream because of that temporal breaking. Not true. They were separate civilizations, part of the same overall world empire, the whole Tartarian empire, the worldwide empire. Then they went to war with each other, two different factions. So, because of Orion manipulation across time. We've talked about that a lot from the Atlantean and Lemurian War. But, okay, here we are. This is another channel came in from Chrome attached to this. He goes, PsyOps. Isaac is ultimately correct, Christopher. Wade through the crap and find the truth. Chrome. Okay. Didn't hold back with that one. Okay, next.
Who and what are changers and anti-changers?
Yeah, I put my own explanation, and then I got a channel here at the bottom. So, okay. This is a great question. A changer is someone who does good by people and or society as a whole. A truther can be a changer, for instance. An anti-changer is someone who is an agent of chaos in society, a disruptive influence in a very bad way. There's some people that are disruptive influences in good ways to make change too. So I want to say that's also a changer would be a truther, somebody who disrupts things and makes things budge a little bit is that as well. Changers can all be a disruptive influence in a very good way too. Handlers are anti-changers, so are some narcissists. Inborns are anti-changers, for instance. Inborns are essentially hyperactive narcissists that were altered in a pre-birth fetal stage to be so programmed that any attempt to focus on them, either energetically or physically, will end up either you being pegged as the bad guy, quote unquote, or them being seen as a guru, quote unquote. They feed off of the adoration of others. All focus types, positive and or negative, give them strength. An anti-changer can even be a false truther spreading lies for a three-letter agency, essentially. A champion, a shill, said in other words, a shill. So, as we've said in the past. Some of the cool kids, as we've called them in the past. So, this is Isaac just really quickly going through this. He goes, this is correct, but there are far more names, as well as far more types. The pecking order goes agent, handler, narcissist, inborn. And that's what he put, is that order. If you want to see us go through the whole changer, anti-changer conversation, please let us know. Because we did an old episode ages ago on this. Be happy to go over this and rehash it. As an actual separate episode by itself. So, next.
What do a lot of galactics and or groups of them love to use proper human names, Steve and or Stephen?
This was actually a question of mine that I put into the Q&A because I was curious about this. I kept seeing this pop up constantly. Steve, Stephen, Stefan, over and over again. So, it is simple. It's the easiest for them to pronounce, say, and or to spell correctly. Universal translators aside, some names are indeed easier to say, spell. That's all I got. And yeah, okay, for if you mean average a bunch of ETs out there that are trying to say certain syllables, I suppose Steve, Stephen, Stefan is actually easier to say for some of their vocal cords. So that actually made a lot of sense. So next.
For Dugan, if possible, hi. Do you ever come to the Tennessee area?
And he said, not often, dear, but I have been there. Okay, this is a multi-part one.
Okay.
So,
do you prefer a different climate like me? I like the warmer months.
I prefer the colder climates such as Alaska. Me and Lovejoy do.
What are some favorite things you and your family like to do?
We do have forms of entertainment like watching humans, hee. Only kidding, sort of, hee. But we do enjoy sporting type games, hunting, fishing, and of course, eating. Now, the sporting games are a lot like your lacrosse, sort of, but with handmade nets.
Have you ever traveled to other planets?
Not myself, no, but Lovejoy has been off-world once. She loved it.
Also, please tell me if you knew I was going to take your picture or what that day in Alaska.
Okay. I knew when you arrived in the area by your energy. Then came the picture. Also, I did know that you were coming. Anala Moyes. Dugan. Dugan is up in the Fairbanks area, if people want to know. He didn't care if anybody knows. So is Lovejoy. If you go to the world of Sasquatch, you're going to see the episode about Lovejoy in there. On Rumble.
And I'm assuming this is Michael Jackson.
Yep.
Question for Michael Jackson. Why does the internet keep saying you are alive?
This was actually kind of funny. So sorry to all you QAnoners out there, sort of, about he compared it to the JFK Jr. thing. So, like with John F. Kennedy Jr. and QAnon, people want a figurehead to look up to, a quest to finalize, and a boss to defeat. In my case, it was and or still is you guessed it, psyops. Then that was Michael Jackson. He was basically saying that whole internet thing about him being still alive. He might be still alive, and so was the JFK Jr. thing. As in, they said, was it on July 4th of 2020 or something like that? Trump was actually going to release talk about the JFK Jr.'s fiasco. If you all guys remember that back in that time frame, this is what he was comparing this to. That whole psyops right there. So now I am going to actually play a video for you. It's very, very short. It's like a minute or less than a minute here. So this one, this one may take me a second to set up here. I forgot we had this in the Q&A. So, okay. Gotta wait till this thing loads. Okay. Now I'm going to screen share. Actually, doing these little videos are fun, like these little 20-second ones or something like that. People want to send these in. Yeah, please do this. So this makes answering the questions much easier. So I will show this. Okay. And you all see this glow at the top here on this video, and they keep saying free energy Tartary. I'm going to move. That's what shows the date there. It was from the beginning of the year here, January of 25, January 4th, 25. Now, this here, this glow, some people are saying free energy. They had this in one of the Tartarian structures, because you've heard of the Crenum has the twisty structures, and they're actually much more ancient than people realize. Not just from mud flood, but from before, and it has ancient tech in there, and or augmented tech with modern day. This, of course, this is would be like a Tartarian structure. This is in Poland, because there's a Tartarian fortress there. Hitler tried to go into Poland for that reason, because the Draco were telling him to look for old structures and old technology from the period, because the Orions were trying to reobtain it because the resources were dwindling. They wanted the old so they could reform resources. Now, with this, there is another angle to this that you have all heard us talk about, and I'm going to take this out of screen share. I do believe all of you remember, and let me move this out of the way here. You remember back in when we went to the National Cathedral back in, and I'll read after I'm done explaining it, I will go in reverse this time, then I'll read the channel. Back in the National Cathedral, when we were talking about how Joanna got the foot spike feeling in her foot, and I had to remove a foot spike. I came up to find out the origins for that were an energy collector that was through the floor. And if you look at the National Cathedral, there are basically symbols of soul contracts, soul bindings, everything on the outside. You enter there, you are consenting to this. Now, the revocation that gets rid of these is, and I will do the short version of this. Basically, anybody watching this, do you essentially revoke any and all ties, bindings, contracts, entanglements, programs, strings, and agreements made with walking on to church sites, holy sites, temple sites, graveyards, and historic sites? The answer to that is yes, because these energy collectors are in those places. And I found out the origin of this was Atlantis. Goes right back to Atlantis again, because in the times towards the end, what happened with the people is they were getting an echo across time. This is where you get your transhumanistic stuff from. They were getting an echo across time because the women of Atlantis and the scientists of Atlantis both had the same goal. They were stretching across time, talking to the Orions back in the time of the Ragnarok. And they made the Atlanteans build their own homegrown version of this. And Poseidon, unfortunately, participated in this, and he's the inventor of the foot spikes, I came to find out, in galactic history. Whereas you would plug into a matrix and then enter a false world. Many people believe in the Matrix movies. They were actually referencing this, because when Morpheus says we don't actually know what year it is, we think it's closer to 21, like 90-something or other. They don't know. It was it was 2194 or something like that. But they said we don't actually know. And then you find out that fight in the Scion colony was actually, the architect said, that had been repeated many hundreds of times in many variations. So, and also several times, they said it was like 6 or 7 for that specific one. So then in the second movie, you see the Monica Bellucci character with 2 vampires guarding her. She said, oh, they're from an earlier form of the Matrix, meaning all the myths, legends, aliens, just like the seer said in that. You see aliens, you see werewolves, vampires. This is what the Matrix isn't supposed to be doing. One could argue in the lore, they didn't specifically say this, but one could argue that it started with the fall of Atlantis, and then the Matrix actually started from that point. One could argue that point in the lore, if you really look at it. It's not proved because it hasn't been written. Maybe the writers can add that to the lore. Maybe that would then be part of actual galactic history if you want to add that, but into the lore, into the canon. But one could argue this, because of the fact that not only the Tartarian structures, but from Atlantis, and that was more of a church structure, anything church related, from the garb, the clothes, the mitre hat, the cross even, and they even show that as Talos' symbol in the older scrolls is the cross, or like a Templar cross, all of these things. Atlantis, even in a previous, or in an episode of GIC, I even mentioned a thing called the Vijara, meaning this is the thing that I end up sticking demons in when I find them and cut their head off and sticking them in. And I was wondering, I thought Isaac was saying jar or bell jar, and it really was saying Vijara, meaning a trap. And that has to do with the Pandora's box mythology. You will have to go to gic.show to review all of that. I am not reinventing the wheel here. It takes too long. But just know, all of these symbols, and some are in the cross form too, all Atlantis, every bit of it. And Terminator, that people are getting the idea of Armageddon from both the Ragnarok, they're getting it from their past, not the future, and they're getting it from Atlantis. So what's behind you, well, often, if it's undealt with, often feels like it's ahead of you. This is where people are getting the need for transhumanism, and the idea of it, just it can be done in a good way. Just allow people the choice. Don't force people into it, and don't force people not to do it. That's the whole point of this. And I will read the channeling. And I said, and part of the question here was, is this energy harvesting in a good way or a bad way? And he said, and I believe this was Isaac, yeah. This is a little from column A, a little from column B. On one hand, a Tartarian free energy device. On the other, hijacked to take your energy to fuel itself too. And then he was pretty angry about it. This is all that I will say on this subject. You both know the rest, meaning the soul trap, soul trade. If you want to go into more information about that, Ryan and I did an episode in the Elder Scrolls called Soul Traps and essentially those types of situations. So, since soul contracts. So, but yeah, this is what he was basically saying. All the technology from that period, the Orions hijacked it from the Atlantean period. They hijacked it with, well, also from the previous period from Asgard exploding, but also post-Atlantis, they hijacked a lot of the different things around as well with this bit of AI. And also Atlantis tried to conquer the globe with this as well, so they're just as responsible. So people want to see more on the Atlantean Lemurian conflict, let us know. So next.
And this is
this was Andy Gibb.
Andy Gibb. Okay. It says, "Hi, Andy Gibb. Was it you that gave the song Synchronicity to me on the way to the post office today? A message for you by brothers."
By his brothers, the Bee Gees, essentially. And this was coming up in a private session with a friend of ours. And he kept coming through, but it was because, at first I thought it was because she liked him a lot, but then he came through. And I know there's a bit of personal thing in here, but this is actually, he brought it in more of a generalized fashion. Let me get a drink here. This is long. Okay. We're getting a lot of celebrities in this, folks. If you guys have any idea of a possible celebrity possibly that could fit some of these MOs that we're talking about, from Diddy to Epstein to any of these, you don't want to tell who to channel or who to bring through, because it might not be a positive source. But if you think that on an intuitive level it might fit, let us know. So, yes, good to hear. Oh, yes, Christopher, good ear you have. And this message was of my tragic end, but it is but a mirror others in your spirit family wish to convey. I had addiction issues, chronic pain, both emotional as well as physical. I wished that I was no longer here. And he said that a lot towards the end of his days there. Days later, I died. Though it was my time, there are exit points in which a mission can be derailed. This means that spirit has a funny way of being right. If this makes sense to anyone seeing and or hearing this, your memory wanes when you have medicine in your system like I did. But just because you don't do drugs and alcohol like I did does not mean that you don't have a potentiality for substance abuse. No insult intended. This means somebody's brain, there's a lot of people's brains that are geared for this that never do it. This is what he's trying, this is the message he's trying to convey here. No insult intended, because meaning it wasn't as personal as I was making it. But the mind had a funny way of storing back a lot of shit from a long time ago, but also has extreme capacity to auto-repair, to return you to a state of wholeness and balance. That said, I wish to greet you on behalf of your soul family. They wish you to be more whole, grounded, and seek help when needed. You help so many others, help yourself first. But you knew that, right, Christopher? Meaning, he generalizes, I won't read anymore, but he generalized this enough to where it could be public for public consumption. I'm not going to read anymore of that. It's too long. So we'll just go on to the next one.
Are you going to?
Oh, yeah. I can't play the, oh, I'm sorry. I can't play this video. It's because it's too long. It's the Michael Jackson video. Let's see, what was the name of it? The Way You Make Me Feel. And it's about, I believe her name was Tatiana. Let me check real quick what the full name was before I screw it up. Let me see here. Okay. Tatiana. Okay.
Cordova?
Let's see, is this Cordova?
No.
No, that is not her. Hang on. I'm sorry, everybody. I forgot to put this up. Let's say, Michael Jackson. Let's see. Okay. The name of the person that was being asked about was Tatiana Thumzen. I cannot pronounce that name. I'm sorry. It's spelled, the last name is THUMB, thumb, and then TZEN. So, and this was from his The Way You Make Me Feel music video. If you want to look that up on his official YouTube, he has an official YouTube, so does George Carlin, but they both have died. You know, I don't know who's running those two, but that's their official ones. All right. This is what he had to say on this. This is the only public thing that I will say. She made me feel good, then I controlled and handled her. And he was very sad about this. Good times turned into bad times, quickly escalating, but never truly seen by me until spirit form. I'm so sorry, Tatiana, I truly am. And then he was sad about this. He goes, thank you, Chris and Christine. She's allowing me to say her name, by the way. This truly means a lot to me. Get the message out. In the book, he's wanting me to write a book with all these channelings, by the way. If people want to see that, let me know. If that's even a venture worth going. So he wants it, but if you guys want to see a collection of these in written form, let me know. So actually, we'll just go on to the next one then.
Michael, why don't other channelers report on this level of both negative as well as positive details, only focusing on one small area of your life?
Because they either have an admire bias towards me and don't want to accept the truth, the horrors of the world are too hard for them to face, and or they don't have as much range as they would like. You, however, do. Not self-promoting, but you are different, Chris, just saying. And he addressed this to me because the thing is, he wrote the question, but then he answered the question. So this is sometimes how they do this, folks. They get me to write the question and answer the question. It's like they're trying to hint towards you to the right question to ask. Therefore, you ask it. The funny thing, you should ask that because they're influencing the writing of the question. Just like when people send them in, it's pretty much the same thing. It's a synchronicity, but it's more of an alignment with spirit. So, okay, we can go on to the next one here.
What's the difference between death energy and the soul passing on?
All right. This is going to go into another explanation here in a moment, but I will go on to what I wrote here. The difference is that death energy is what erupts from the body's cells upon the moment of death, permeating the surrounding land and or structures, property, people. This is separate from the soul leaving, whereas this type of energy, this energy type is bound into the water and genetic memory in and or of the body. Upon the soul leaving, the other energy type is no longer held back and can disperse. Ghouls tend to follow people around that are about to die because they smell this energy. so to speak. All right. Draco and soul fishermen pirates, this is what I call them, tend to try to come for the soul, but can be bypassed by not going, they can be bypassed by not going to the light, but by going to the right of the light tunnel. Never accept last rites either. This is because life is eternal and that there is no such thing as last. Life not only finds a way, but continues on forever and ever into eternity itself. Saying last rites is simply put a contradiction in terms. It's all in the wording, aka fine print. There is no such thing as a soul contract either. This is not only part of the soul trade, but sounds far too business oriented. And again, go to the episode of the Elder Scrolls that Ryan and I did about soul traps and the soul trade. For that, also there is a Babylon 5 reference I will make where you heard a telepath in the show talking about an invader that turns the corner into where these other telepaths are staying, and they were able to shove one of the enemies away telepathically to get them to turn around. One stumbles also into the space and dies. This person, this one telepathically is explaining, oh, his essence then is erupting from his body, permeating the wall, and disperses. And it was the death energy. He was referring to the soul going to the afterlife, but the other part that he was saying permeating the wall, that's the death energy. There were two different references being made there. They made within the same reference. I just wanted to point that part out. Okay, here's the channeling. One thing has been forgotten in this description, and that is sometimes one must be there to help cross one over into the spirit world. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but when the need arises, one is called into action. Isaac. Now, this is where I will begin this particular tale. This happened yesterday. So I again, Spirit had me ask the question to answer the question per experience.
So I'll start it off. We
Okay.
actually went with a family member who needed to go to a cardiologist appointment. And so Chris and I went. And when we were entering the building, we saw a woman who her husband was in a wheelchair going into the building. Didn't see anyone else, so made the assumption that he was able to get out of the car and get himself into the wheelchair. So we were getting ready to leave, and the person we were with looked out the window and saw them and felt strongly that they may need some help. So when we all went out, in fact, they did, that the husband that was sitting in the wheelchair really didn't have the energy and couldn't get himself back into the car. I asked them, could he bear any weight whatsoever on his own feet? Because obviously, if he can, then, it makes it easier to help get him into the car. But if he can't, that's a kind of a big issue. And she basically said that she felt that he couldn't today bear any weight, and that she had called a friend to come and to assist. And she did ask, did we mind staying to potentially also help? And so what ended up happening is we did, and after waiting a bit, a friend came in their car to help assist get him in. And basically it was decided that two males basically get the wheelchair up to the seat. The friend would lift him, pull out the wheelchair. The other guy would help move him into the car. And so as this happened, and the husband was awake, was talking, just very, very, very weak. And as they went into the car and they were successfully getting his bottom onto the passenger side seat, he had reached up and he had grabbed the door, the window top, and they couldn't pivot him into the car because first of all, he wasn't letting go. And so, basically I just said, you need to let go so they can pivot you into the car. Then some really weird things started happening.
Letting go meant a totally different thing in the
Right.
concept. So
Then something really strange was happening. So remember, he was in a sitting position, right? Where his hips and his legs could bend to sit. Now all of a sudden this gentleman could not bend, and he was like flattening himself out to be in a complete flat position. And I had asked the wife, he is flattening out. He can't bend anymore. And she just made this remark, well, he's done that before. Well, now this was becoming quite dangerous because this gentleman now was sliding back out of the car because he was like basically trying to fold himself back down, couldn't be bent up. And then I looked at him and looked at his face and realized that from my perspective, I was looking at someone who had died. And so there was no strength, obviously, in his body to be able to bend or whatever, because you're dealing with just something trying to spread itself out that's, let's call it dead weight. And so I looked at him, and then, it took a minute for me to register what was going on. And then I looked at him again, and then he seemed back. And then I looked again, and the same thing was starting, and I asked someone to please call 911 and told the gentleman they're going to have to just slowly lower him to the ground, lower him out of the car into the ground, and we will have him laid out. Well, when they did do that, I could not feel a pulse on this gentleman, but just soon afterwards, he did start breathing. And so, and he was on the ground. Someone had a pillow for his head. 911 had been called. And so it was just an interesting situation where something very strongly in me said, at this point, 911 was on their way and that we needed to leave. One of them was the person that we were with. It wouldn't have done them very well to witness someone dying in front of them at all.
Mhm.
And so we actually left. Now, Chris had some obviously watching energetically what was going on.
Yeah.
So you can take it from
Yeah,
there.
and what ended up happening was I was actually watching his energy leaving, watching that erupt from his body, knowing when the death energy is leaving. There are ghouls that come for this, and then of course there are Draco demonic or demons that come for it, also the horn kind, devil type that come for this. I noticed not only there were two ghouls, there was a horned Draco, one of those big berserker looking, like soul eating type one. And I was like, no, you're not. And I got rid of him. But I was noticing his cells were doing this pop, 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 like firecrackers. That told me he was detaching, like ripping loose, like ripping roots loose from the ground, like you pulled something loose from the ground, like a weed or a tree or something like that, and like he was pulling loose. This is what this was, and I saw completely he was not there anymore at all. Now, I was at a stage where I was just getting ready to walk away, and this was before I dealt with the demonic entities. And then the other family member came up to me, grabbed my arm, and looked right at me and said, "You're going to hell, right?" And I knew this was not him. This was Isaac. This was basically what you just heard him say in that channel. He was basically saying, when the need arises, one is called into action. That is essentially one of those things supposed to be there for that reason to move that person on. And that's a spirit world oriented thing when that happens, or true benevolent source creator oriented thing, or soul family oriented thing. Even though I, sometimes don't like constantly doing this, it wears me down, and I'm probably the one that bitches the loudest about it. But when you're in a situation like that, that is actually a thing that needs to be done.
Right. So we literally had gotten about a half mile down the road, was stopping at a pharmacy so this person could pick up a prescription.
Mhm.
And the soul of this person who was now a ghost,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, because I hadn't had made it followed us
Followed me.
down the road
Yeah.
for Chris to have the conversation and just explain that his body was just, it was just done for.
His body
And
was
he
done
was
for,
ready
yeah.
to go home, and then Chris literally opened the door.
I opened the door, moved in. He went on his own. He was very kind. He was not like some of the dumb ghosts I run across. Even like the guy that drove off the pier here. Very understanding. This guy was very understanding. He was highly intelligent. He was very kind. I was more than happy to help somebody that wasn't in haunt mode. Okay, so or ghoul mode or ghost or typical ghost mode or demonic mode, where they merge with crap and everything. This was not like that. This was straight up, simple. He was kind. He was ready to go his time. So very simple. And on the radio of the car, when they were in the pharmacy, I switched it over to one of the rock stations. It was Octane or one of those. And the Avenged Sevenfold song Nightmare popped on. And I dictate that as, or I equate that to, I call that the Draco theme song. If you guys want to go listen, you will hear the whole thing about Nightmare. You will hear about the whole thing, like what Draco do to people with the nightmares and the soul rending and reaving and all this other stuff. That popped on right after I moved him on, meaning they were pissed that I did this. I took their meal, and also, but the ghouls, of course, are there to clean up the death energy. That has nothing to do with the soul. But with the others, the Draco that I took on, they were basically saying, "Nightmare, you should have known that you weren't supposed to do that." That's essentially kind of like how the song goes. So basically, they wanted to punish. Never happened, mind you, but it was an idle threat. Nothing happened, nothing came of it. There was no blowback from it at all.
Right.
So,
But I'm just, but just also to reiterate, when we left him, everyone fined waved us on because he was breathing again. So sometime between the time we got a half mile down the road, whether or not his body was, I think his soul didn't move on to his body, really just, so all we can imagine is that when the ambulance showed up, he was gone then or soon afterwards.
mhm.
But we didn't, I just want to say, he was breathing, the wife was fine, the friends were there with them, and they thanked us and let us go on our way. I don't think, telling from how they were reacting, that they were expecting him to pass.
One of the family members of his kind of was. She was very paranoid about it, very upset. Like she knew something was up. She saw what I saw. She saw the dead eyes. So there was one person in that group that did notice it, other than ourselves. Hopefully nobody in that group sees this and is offended by this at some point. But I do want to say the family member of ours, when I saw his eye change color, I knew this was Isaac because the face change was different. And Isaac has a bit of bluish turquoise eyes and sometimes purplish. He sometimes will switch it. And that's what his eyes changed to, was a turquoise-ish variety. At first, I thought it was probably because of the medical condition he had, because of the eyes change and the blood-brain type of thing. No, this was because of transmutation. Because Isaac was present. And more likely prevented him from having a medical episode as well. That's what I feel, anyway. You can always ask him. We can always ask him. At some point, he's not going to be present in this episode. But I will say, ghouls are also mixed up with Draco as well. Ghouls were I'll just bullet point this. Ghouls were Neanderthal consciousness a long time ago. Neanderthals were created. The Earth tried to rebalance them, and after they tried to create an empire, tried to go after regular humans. Humans innovated technology. Engineering went after them, lessened their numbers. Earth integrated them in like what an invasive species would be. And basically they became non-corporeal into ghouls. They basically, since they were cannibalistic anyway, they're like the orcs in Lord of the Rings. You hear AJ and Y-Files talking about them as well. That was a synchronicity as well. They became more like carrion eaters, where they would just take care of that death energy. And that's how the Earth, past the seeding time frame, took care of this, bouncing them in. taking an invasive species and integrating them in. And it worked. But ghouls will sometimes prey on people with bad hearts too. If you ever have a dream where you have like you see your heart beating out of your back or your chest, or you're hearing a heartbeat, you're hearing the echolocation signal like a bat from a ghoul presence that's going like echolocation, and it's bouncing the sound wave off through the echolocation. You're hearing like your heart is beating out of your back, or you're seeing it in the dream state out of body. Like that's a ghoul presence. And sometimes they're trying to create the very thing they want to get. That's cheating. They're not actually supposed to do that. That's more Draco territory, even though you don't want that either.
But you can find them sometimes.
Yeah.
If somebody dies in a neighborhood, they could go going around the neighborhood looking, is there anything else around that they could?
They're scavengers.
That they could scavenge, because that happened to us, and that's when I had felt that, like what in
It was
the
a
world
dream
is
state
that
she
going
had.
on?
Yeah, it was a dream state she had.
But it was that there had been a passing in the neighborhood, and they were just opportunistically going around.
Yeah, ghouls are annoying. They can siphon energy off you. They can cause heart conditions. They can be around people with heart issues. That's generally where they tend to hover. So Draco tend to do everything else. But these guys are specifically oriented in that specific area. And that hospital happened to be a heart specialist. So go figure, they were hovering around a hospital to begin with, dying people, but that specific thing, they were orbiting that place like a moon. So a small moon. So, okay, we'll go on to the next one.
Is the Priory of Scion real, or is it just another fabrication of Rome and the Jesus legend?
Okay, this is what Isaac had to say about this, and he's commented on like the Great Pope and a lot of other episodes in the past. We did the episode on the Great Pope and Father Mort's group being the yin and yang of the Vatican and the Church. Go back and listen to that episode if you want to see that. This had to touch on also the Jesus Christ legend and all of that we've spoken about in the past as well. If you want to know more about the whole Jesus bloodline thing, just let us know. The Priory of Scion oversees one thing and one thing only, that of the Merovingian family interests. They're like a mob family, essentially. Although that family exists, as did the actor, do they guard the line of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene? No, they do not. They protect the family business, so to speak. Just like Father Mort's group does for good, this family does for evil. The same, as I said, was and or is for the Great Pope. Think Sith and Jedi. That is all for now, Isaac. And that's actually the very to the point answer for that. But go back on the Vatican and the Great Pope episode we did not that long ago. You're going to see more of the information there. So this is okay. You'll have to read this over here.
Is there truth in the particular,
This particular room?
ruin? Are you going to show?
Oh yeah, here I can just show this real fast. I have to show a picture from our script here. All right. Do you guys see this rune right here? This algiz here, a rune of protection.
Yeah. It says, have I made? I have one I made by painting a rock and putting it in my flower pot.
And
It says also, if I made those protection runes using shungite mixed with paint, would that be better, basically?
And then this answers all three of these if you want to read that one.
And if I place rocks in my garden with protection symbols, will it work, and against what?
Okay. Now I will go into this. All right. Let's see here. And this was from Chrome. Yes, this symbol is potent, and coupled with shungite and in a circle of stones, this symbol will work well. Coupled with fire, it really works. Against what? Harmful fairies, especially within a stone circle, and some demon types. But the best defense is always doing good shadow work, inner work, to couple with other protection. And that was from Crumb. And that was the Rune of Protection. Algiz. I'll see if I can. Nope, I can't zoom in on that. But I was going to give the explanation here. Nope, it will not let me do. Oh, yeah, I will do it this way. All right. It says, Algiers symbolizes protection, defense, and higher connection. It is the shield of the warrior and the guardian of sacred spaces. A powerful sign for invoking spiritual and physical safety, strength, and awakening. And so, it took me a minute to be able to see that. All right, now I do believe we can go on to the next one. This is another picture. So I will bring this back up again. Okay, you see this snowflake gorilla picture here?
Says this is Snowflake, the world's only known albino gorilla.
And this little critter reminds me of the forest people. And the answer was, I said, I do believe they are cousins. And this was Orlok that showed up here. They are cousins of ours, but mostly in an earlier hominid kind of stage. Orlok. So he's a forest person from the West Coast in California. So now we'll go on to the next one. And okay, right here.
It says, I was watching a Star Wars commercial and I saw the Wookiee. I've always wanted to ask Orleg if the Wookiee is related to the Force people.
Okay. All right. Now this is Orlog. And I found out Orlog in ancient Old Norse means destiny, by the way. That happened to pop up, and it was spelled different with only one G and an O instead of an A. It's Orlog with an umlaut above it. So the answer to this was interesting. This is what we did on the World of Dogmen years ago. By the way, we talked about the swamp dwellers, talked about the Wauki. So I said, actually, I found out they are a mix between Dogman and Sasquatch. Wauki in Seminole language means swamp dweller person. And this is Orlog here. Yes, Orlog here. He is right. George Lucas spent time with the Seminole tribe in Florida to learn local legends. In this, Wookiees were born. Haha. Orlog. Now, he claims up and down that Wookiees were not based on Sasquatch nor Dogmen or any other legend of cryptids of any kind. George Lucas, you are full of crap, because I know you got this from here. The Seminole Indians have a record of you being in Florida. So if you hear this, I know this is the gig is up here, because this is where you got it from. And the name matches, Wauki or Wookie. Chewbacca is a Wookie. And they live in a swamp, and they're essentially dog people. You got it from a real legend. You have the Rougarou and others from the south too, but the Wauki was very specific. And also there's a bit of Sasquatch behavioral mannerisms in there as well. So this was too specific to have just been channeled, or somebody got an idea from the ethers, because everything that ever was or is and will be, that's where ideas come from, is the butterfly effect or the ethers. Yes, you get it from there and be pretty exact? Yes, but this was so exact, it could have gotten from no other way than from the Seminole tribe in Florida, which testified to the fact that Lucas was down there questioning. So, about legends. All right. Now we are at the end of this, but to the Galactic Interversal Spirit World Elemental Contribution. Yes, they had me expand that out that far.
Well, they're just saying it could be any one of those areas.
Yes,
that someone's coming in from.
Because these Q&A shows are so eclectic and have an eclectic mix. Of course, it would fit all four of those particular areas. So, and I heard Isaac say, kind of like a compass. Okay, sort of. Okay. Now, this is. I'm going to differ slightly on technique for the end of this. Well, not quite. But some of these celebrities that come in at the end, or any of the people that come in at the end of the channel, normally, of course, I would normally pre-channel a lot of their stuff like we do with Michael Jackson, but also like with Joan Rivers, George Carlin, and Carl Weathers. I channeled them all at the end, and they just answered questions as we went along. Some prefer it that way. George didn't really want to. No, George Foreman didn't want to do any of this at all. This next person is going to be Whitney Houston, because she wanted to get some stuff out. There was some questions that were being sent, and there were other channelers, and I won't mention the other channelers. Just know there are some out there that only say the kind stuff or the biases, like what Isaac was saying. Sometimes they have a bias attached and they don't want to look at the darker parts, or actually it was Michael Jackson that said this. They don't want to look at the darker parts of the other history. They don't want to really believe there's something this evil out there. And I get it. But when you do channels, you have to put any and all biases aside. You have to set your own personal opinion of someone aside and listen to what is being said. And I'm not saying channel anything and everything, and some channelers make this mistake too, and I want to point this out. This is a no-no. True benevolence with no conflicting agendas. This is what you need to begin. All this when you open the circle up, and of course you do the close at the end. But you have to be very particular. If something feels right, go for it. But if it doesn't feel right, don't go for it. But at the same time, there's information that spirit is trying to bring to the surface. Everything's trying to be balanced and righting itself. And this with Whitney Houston, this was no different. So I gotta shrink this down just slightly. So nope, not that far. Boy, that's being a pain. Okay. I got to put it down here because that whole thing. I'll be in channel, so you'll be able to read all of those. Okay, got man. Got mouth. All right. I know benevolent with Whitney Houston. I know you wanted to come through in this particular way. Okay. Are you here? I sense your energy, but I do not see you. I need to be able to see and speak to you face to face. Benevolent Whitney Houston. In spirit form. If you are not in spirit form, I will cross you. But okay. Isaac, I do have just one quickie. If she's in spirit form and there was all these injustices, is it a lower rung like Michael Jackson started out as, and then he went up in form? So I noticed during someone else's session, he went up in vibration because the rest of the spirit world kind of conspired against him to get him to move higher. And Ragnar even came through in another person's session and basically kind of belittled him, called him the diddler and all this other stuff to get him to regress back to the time before the thing happened. That's what King Ragnar was trying to do. Got him to move on, and now his oversoul is rebalanced again. Does this have to happen with Whitney Houston, or is she at a high enough level to where a channel of this nature is even possible? Yes or no? Can. Yes. Okay. Channelers, you have to ask this. Of what level in spirit are they? It's not just blah. Remember the quote. I know this is a Jesus quote, but my Father's kingdom is made up of many mansions. Spirit has these different rungs. I've seen some on here go up to here, and I've seen, of course, their oversoul is omniversal and super omniversal. But there is also an essence that goes back to oversoul and retrofits it, like Frank Frazetta's did with Frazetta World, he said, with his creations. This is a true thing where you can create a world, you can create a planet, you can create a universe, a whole dimension out of just an idea. And an idea then comes from there and gets channeled. So, benevolent Whitney Houston, before I get too far off the multiversal mark here, yes, I know. All right. Oh, you shush. She goes, others did tell me that you actually didn't shut up. Okay, thank you. All right. And that would be whom? All right, let's see. All right. Okay. True benevolence. Okay. Ooh. She's like this. So, all right. Now I see you. I see you. Good, you're not blind. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Your energy's very strong. I mean, I don't know if you're picking up on that.
She's very strong, actually. Whoa. Yeah.
I mean,
damn right.
It's a lot of pressure.
Oh, just folks, before I do any of this, I will say that there is an immense amount of pressure coming. I have to investigate this one stage further. So before I hand over my vocals. I need you to be truly benevolent with no conflicting agendas.
Do we need a filter?
Okay, I'm going to
Because this
put
is like really strong.
I will take a Whitney Houston's oversoul only. True benevolence with no conflicting agendas. There we go. Now the pressure is lifting. I had to specify. Okay. So that means there was a ghostly self involved. All right. So to other channelers channeling her and those that already have, just know there's multi-parts and multi-facets here. So.
And you're not supposed to do anything that really is going to cause harm. So if an energy is coming in and it feels like it is so crushing and compacting,
Mhm.
you may need to actually be letting, something else, as Chris was getting even further, because at that kind of pressure that was happening, it would harm you and you wouldn't be able to do it for very long. It would start to cause problems.
Yes, it would start to cause problems, but Michael Jackson, I think I see you here. Okay, yeah,
It was very strong.
yes, is she here as well? Of course, we have to have her answer these questions here. So is she here? Right there with you by our fire pit, focal point there. Okay, so okay, can you please tell me the difference between what I just felt and you? One was a shadow, one was the person. Okay. Of what took place, because you're in the process of resolving things too, because there has to be healing taking place. Are you suitably able to channel? Just okay, and Isaac is in agreement here. Okay, just it might not be for as long as you'd like,
No, this is
but
just,
just I will allow it, except that
we'll go through this.
we'll go through these
We'll
questions.
go through these questions quickly, but obviously I know you'll want to say something.
Yes.
So when you let me know and I can ask the questions and we'll do them pretty quick.
Okay. Okay. True benevolence. True benevolent. Whitney Houston. Yes. Okay, here we go. That's lightening up. There we are. There we are. I need you to please see this crystal in front of you. Can you please utilize that as the channel buffer? Absolutely. She says she likes my middle finger. The thing, I have a statue here of a middle finger. I'm not going to pull it out, but it's right here. Oh, shut up. She said, don't ever pull it out. Thank you. Thank you. Sense of humor. Thank you. You're upset.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Okay. Ooh, a little quick there. Apologies. I do have a message to give. Michael said this was an apt way to bring this out. I will say that they found me in the whole bathtub situation, face down. And the other channelers said it was on my own vomit, which, yeah, I will agree. Did I feel all of this? No, not completely. Like with the man you were mentioning. He did not feel all of that. You were seeing him in pain briefly. He sends his regards. He will make further contact at some other point. I'm in fluctuation at the moment, so I will be as brief as I can, so I do not tax your house's energy, your energy, or incur any sort of blowback any kind. This is not my intention. But my intention is justice, seeking that. So please go ahead with your question.
Okay, so again, the person who Chris was working with just kind of gave a list of really quick kind of bullet point questions. So the first one is about your death. It was around the Grammys. Was this a ritual sacrifice?
I will have to say yes to this because there were those around me. Of course, I said in the previous channel that I capitulated and always played the game. There were times I did not, but I was still slated for a ritual sacrifice, just like with Michael. They did things via mind control, but they knew his ultimate purpose coming in was to oust them. I'm sorry for the bodily reactions. My energy is causing him an inordinate amount of gas, so I will be as quick as I can. I'm releasing as he's releasing. This, in that murder, even it was a murder. Yes, I overdose? Yes. Was it on drugs, cocaine? Yes. Your Matthew Perry went through something similar when he was found in his hot tub. And he didn't play the game either. He can always talk about this as he's done in some of your previous Q&As. He's not really a channel type, but he wanted to get the message out via also myself. You've heard from Val Kilmer, Michael Jackson, and Gene Hackman, and all of them. These were non-game players. These were people that were going against not only the Diddy narrative, but the Epstein narrative. I know you have some questions on that, so we can go ahead.
Well, I do want to do one quick follow-up on the concept of a ritual sacrifice. So when anybody gets to a certain level to be able to move into, let's call it the next tier, somehow you are indoctrinated officially into this.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not making judgments, just saying this is what happens. Are you guys told because there seems to be, and I'm assuming even though we're being able to point these things out right now, that it must have always gone on. There is apparently requirements for ritual sacrificing.
Yes.
And that sometimes if it's your number, it's just your number.
It's just your number.
Are you told that when you're initiated in?
No, not completely. Even though at first I was not a game player, I was a game player after a while as far as how the business side went. Are people told that, of course, they will be the sacrifice for the moment? No, Michael Jackson was more of this by the mind control aspects. They did that to him. They marked him for death. They did this to myself because I started to kick back a little bit. And I started to make friends in both high and low places, you could say. No offense to Garth for the reference I just made. Great guy, by the way. Great man and his wife, Trish Yearwood. But this, and his children, but this, I started to slip down a darker path, and Bobby Christine and them, she's with me as well. They also did the same to her. And Bobby and I, meaning Bobby Brown and I, it was more of a mind control abuse fest back and forth. I was not the greatest person in the world, and neither was he, and neither is he. Was he the one that did this? He got me started on the path to addiction because he was addicted. You see, misery loves company. But it was those energies that kept going down the line to eventually get anybody. They try to get anyone addicted so they have something that can be used against them when they do the sacrificing. You see, with Michael, they mind controlled him to get on an addiction of some kind, and they mind controlled him around the children and everything. But with mine, it was just more good old fashioned vice. And they will try to get you in any way possible. If you're a golden boy and don't have anything, nothing like that, they'll just kick you out of there. They want something they can use against you. They want never give them any reason to beat you over the head with anything, from vice to anything. I guess we all have our vices, but at the same time, if I could convey anything, don't get stuck in a shit cycle like that, both mentally and physically. Do not denigrate your own human body. Do not do these things to yourself. Then it forms an easy weakness. Addiction is the easiest weakness for them to exploit, if I can give any advice. So
you say basically that, it kind of was a murder ritual sacrifice. So Bobby Brown,
he didn't do the deed, but he might as well have.
Right, but he got you involved, and you partake in the drugs and everything. And at the end, was it just kind of simply that you know, like we talk about these days, the fentanyl, it was just going to be an overdose amount. And it was just brought through the door as an overdose amount. It
Yes.
wasn't that somebody literally injected you or did something like that. It just literally was you overdosed because put in front of you was something that was going to overdose you.
Yes, but they made sure, like with Matthew Perry, they made sure that I had enough in my system to die. So I was murdered.
Okay. So, right, and I agree with that, but so, you know, sometimes it's like, you're just gonna take this one little pill, and I know that one little pill, even though before it never killed you, today it's gonna kill you kind
It
of
will most
scenario.
definitely do it, and it is doing it even as I speak.
Yes, so you know, cause you know, again, people can split a lot of hairs over this. But again, it was an addiction issue that you had that made you very vulnerable to the whims of what other people wanted to happen to you.
Yes, yes.
So
It
that's,
started out one way, but then in order to make sure the deed happened, there was someone there that finished it. Yes.
and so the question naturally comes to the people that were around you or that you knew. Clive Davis comes up, P. Diddy comes up, where you were starting to see things or disagree with things.
Yes.
They felt it went too far. You were then going to be ritually sacrificed. The question actually comes, were any of those people like that really directly involved with being the one to say, to fulfill the deed, I guess?
Yeah, you could say that. Clive Davis, we started out as a friendship, but I noticed real quick that he was more of a Hollywood-er in that way. I do not want to get you guys in trouble, but just know, your friend Christine asked that I delve further into this. He he's a Hollywooder to the end. He's up there with Diddy. He was in this whole crowd. He may not have had the same personality, but he sometimes turned a blind eye. And also, he was what is the term I'm looking for? Groomer. He was a groomer. Groomer. B. Diddy, evil. Groomers are evil, but they started out as having to be groomed, you see. Just like with your Jeffrey Epstein, would groom somebody to then become a handler and or recruiter. This is what happened to Clive. When he eventually crosses into spirit, this is when him and I will hash this out. But I begin it here. If he ever were hear this, I do not want blowback to come down on you. But did Diddy start this with myself as well? And did with Bobby Brown? Did he also get my daughter killed? Yeah, he did. Diddy is an evil piece of shit. So if he ever hears this one day, not anything he can do about it. But just know, dude, you're being watched. So by spirit very heavily. And there are consequences for this in the end. There is no hell, but there is a way of, how can I say, elevation that needs to take place. Not a soul contract, not a life review of any kind, but there are isolations and there are elevations that need to take place. There are aspects of spirit that isolate forms and aspects until they are reintegratable. This is what happened to Michael. Even though he went in for good, he went in too deep and had to have an isolative reintegration, if this makes sense to you. Diddy, you're going to have that done too. More so than anything dear Michael did. Or didn't do. Some of the things that they say he did not. But Diddy is the true diddler here.
And it's really not being said all that he did.
No, Diddy did a lot of diddling.
You know what I mean? I can think it's kind of funny.
He's more abusive than he is the diddler, but
right.
You know what I'm saying.
Right. And so, you know, that whole trial is playing out as we speak. So,
at the time you were doing this, yes, just know some of your Kabbalist forces out there, other factions are trying to scare you through the news in some instances by saying, oh, there's a possibility he could be released. They're trying to spook the people that are accusing him so that they stop it.
Right.
And they would behoove them to not stop it. He needs to rot in hell is what he needs to do.
So, just again, when you first met Bobby Brown, you looked, of course, very, very happy and excited. But
Yes.
there is, I guess, some talk out there. Was this an arranged marriage or was it genuinely you got together, it was love for you? What happened?
It was arranged for him. I didn't know. He knew. He, again, you could say participated in grooming. You could say he participated in handling, so to speak. But was there love there? Yes, there was. But there was also deep argumentative hatred at times as well on both sides. He was more of a handler, but souls can change this. He was groomed to do so, very much like Michael had his programming issues, Bobby had his. Was he abusive? Absolutely. Was I? Absolutely. What do we have our bouts and spats back and forth? Absolutely. We're violent towards one another. This was programming galore.
Mhm.
I'm guilty of many, many counts of this close to the cops being called on either one of us. And sometimes they were. But did he get programmed to handle? You bet. Uh, so did he lay down the drugs again that I eventually got addicted to? Yeah, absolutely. This is how you can tell handlers. They will lay down a path for you in little breadcrumbs. Sometimes they don't know they're doing it, but he was groomed from when he was young to do some of these things. I would like to say he's 100% at fault for this, but I still took the bait.
Right. And so again,
It was not. It was arranged via him. I knew nothing except
Right.
in spirit. I do now.
right. So I think, so you were happily in love.
Yes,
Right. And however, he actually,
you can't fake that.
right. So, no, and you looked at, but towards the end of your life, of course, when the addictions got pretty bad, your health looked bad, people were looking at you, and you know what I mean? Just regular people just seeing you or whatever knew that there was obviously a big problem going on. So I think, obviously, what my question is related to that, since, you were kind of marked as a ritual sacrifice. What people were seeing on TV when you had these appearances and your voice wasn't as good and all of these things that were going on during those last times.
Yes.
Had the ritual sacrifice already began? Or was there something going on at that moment that then caused the ritual sacrifice?
It already began by that
Okay.
point. They showed it because by the marking, it is already begun. You see, they showed that your South Park guys, your Matt Smith and Matt Stone and Trey Parker, showed the whole all the townspeople of South Park going after Britney Spears and actually physically sacrificing her. Now you see her doing all the weird stuff. Who do you think? What do you think is going on there?
Right.
With Miley Cyrus, the whole bit, basically behavioral changes. What do you think is going on there? This is mind control. How she shaved her head and did all this other stuff. Yeah, because around they were showing in South Park, they were showing you what was actually going on, like with your alien thing, with the about the great seeding you were calling it. So they showed that there. They showed simple things too, like with Hollywood. I call it that now because that's essentially what it is. With sacrificial garbage and everything like this. Or they try to get you to do it to yourself. They try you to torture yourself with your own self-hatreds, like what Michael did with his face. But no offense, Michael, they had you looking like a tall white. Just saying. Yeah, he's laughing at that. You got me. But in this, we make jokes too. We didn't used to make jokes back and forth, but now he's at a stage where we can all kind of get along and make jokes. He's not in that self-reflective reintegration cycle anymore. When he saw in his session with a friend of his, when Michael turned back into a small child, that's when he hit the reflective reintegration or isolative reintegration. Even though he'd done channelings with you guys beforehand, he was safe to do so when you get to a certain tier. And you have your astral plane, which I would never recommend channelings from there. Those guys are assholes. Never deal with them. It's this, he calls it the thin ribbon of the spirit world, or the Beetlejuice layer. Never channel anybody from there, no matter if they're family or not. Then you have all these other layers and integrations, and you have also your idyllic self-made heavens, which you guys spoke about a long time ago, the many mansions thing. I am now in a good place. I am you recognized that I had a shade here, and I now am actually wandering down how can I put this? You could say a road, you could say in a forest. And I was always for city life, but I also like nature as well. There were some things of myself I gave up being in that respect. Never give up who you are. I did, and I paid for it in the end. I still paid the ultimate sacrifice, even by giving them what they wanted. Never do that ever to any job or anything that's you're soul sucking. Never give that to them. They do not deserve that ever, or you don't deserve yourself doing it.
Right. And so I guess I have to go back again to ask one more clarification because the whole ritual sacrifice, you know, and so this question goes back to when Hollywood, when the movies all began. We're talking, even ones where they couldn't speak, the original movies. I am guessing that Hollywood was always involved. When it was created, Hollywood became a part of that from day one.
Yes.
So I'm thinking that if Chris and I really could look back on that whole history, there's a whole history of ritual sacrificing.
Even
type
back to the
things.
golden age of Hollywood, yes.
Right. That's what, and right into its very beginning, that these kinds of things occurred. Now, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, because maybe it's just because we haven't been able to go back and see all the ones. It seems to me that a lot more in the last 15, 20 years have occurred. Is it fair to say that, amongst the men and the females, that there's been in the last 15, 20 years, a lot more of this ritual sacrificing going on?
It's picked up. Even when he's mentioned to you in private about the stuntman that died during Ben-Hur,
Right.
this was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed it on screen for a reason. They said to honor him. No, that was the tagline or the excuse. They were showing other people, look what we did. Look what we did. Right there. We ran him over. They couldn't get the one other actor they wanted, so they took a lower level. Look at Brandon Lee when he talked about it. Look at his father. Look at other people that have died there. Look at your Val Kilmer. Look at your Gene Hackman. Look at everybody you've spoken to, Michael Jackson. Yes, it has picked up. But also your three-letter agencies, I want to tell you a bit of history that isn't known all that well. Your earlier three-letter agencies, coupled with the film industry, and really got Hollywood revved up. They use it for stage crafting. That's where you always hear, you hear the Star Trek actors are always dressing up as aliens and abducting people. Who do you think they got some of the training from, or there? They coupled with that. Hollywood is equally guilty in all psyopses, all worldwide CIA ops of some kind. There is script writing going on. You've heard of the script writers where he saw in a Manhattan building one time, some people in an office building writing script taglines for newspapers. That's part of it. The sensationalism behind a thing. You see the whole sensationalism behind people's private lives that they probably shouldn't even be reporting on. This is why you put that there. Put that out there. The people will love to hear this juicy bit of something they probably should not give a crap about. This is all psyops. Every bit of it. Granted, there is a good side to certain things, like say when Joan Rivers came in, when she was talking about what she was talking about, all the humor, all the laughter, all the good things, like her fashion shows, all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly fine. There's this darker side no one knows about in the psyops that people don't know about.
Right.
Now, if these actors want to divulge what they're doing day to day to the paparazzi, that's on them. But those that don't want it, and they still get it divulged, that's on someone else. And then sometimes if you won't have your public laundry or your laundry strewn out in front of the public, then you start to get bullied by some paparazzi. Not all of them. There's several companies. I'm not throwing any of them under the bus, except there are a couple that are more nasty. They blame them for Princess Diana, all this, and she's expressed interest of speaking at some point as well. It'll be a while, though. She's not quite spirit form yet. But with this, they whittle you down little by little. Or as Jeffrey Hunter said, Hollywood is a fickle beast and essentially fueled by not only the public, but by it, the inherent need to eat their own or sacrifice their own. You see. So he says hello, by the way, as well. All of these people were sacrifices. They look for white knights first, those that will stand up, like your Spencer Confidential for Hire character, the Mark Wahlberg type one. Also your James Deans, all of these. They look for people who want to stand up and do what is right and are the uncorruptible ones. Those are the ones they go after first because they're the biggest threat because they're not corruptible. They want the ones that they can control through vice. They want the ones they can control through temptation. They want the ones that they can control through any little thing. And sometimes that people like to say religion then is the guiding light to where there is no such thing as temptation, but they're on the other end of the spectrum where they're getting psyops to not enjoy life. You want to enjoy life, you want to be in balance. But then, of course, go into these other areas. Not everything is temptation, guys. Not everything is a sin. Not everything is, I've heard that 1,000 times too. It's not necessarily religion that's the guiding light. It's more of a spiritual center. This is why you see people like Jonathan Majors. He was holding a Bible at his trial. He was trying to tell them, I'm good. I'm not doing this. You think they targeted him? Yeah, they got him on one little thing. He lost his temper one time. He has a temper. So did I. They get you on any little weakness. If it's anger, they get you. If it's addiction, they get you. If it's sex, they get you. So you can't have anything they can use, but still be a human being, be balanced, be happy, but know what to get pissed about and what not to. Do not fall for them. Do not give more of yourself. Do not consent to that behavior. These are simple guidelines, but at the same time, they convolute this with their corruption so much, you don't know which end is up after a while. And that's what happened to myself.
You know, and I have to actually, I'm being kind of compelled to bring this up right now because these same type of situations of trying to corrupt people, look for their downfalls, look for their vices, look for all of that. It's really in any place. If you are rising in business, it's the same thing because there is a group that is all about who can succeed in business.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in. And I have to say that, for myself personally, and I think Chris would agree with this, or if he doesn't, then you'll let me know. But I think that the fledgling disclosure conferences, are actually in the same boat as well. Because, we've been seeing some things, where it just reminds me so much of, I want to say, and here they come, looking for people's vices, looking for people's downfalls, looking for people's whatever that they can get in, exploit, and control. And we haven't even really gotten off and running, but yet it's right here in our face.
It's in your entire community. It's not just one or multiple people or conferences or one person or one conference. It's all of them. And this is another area that they're trying to bleed into. Essentially, he calls them the New Age Mafia. Your Houdini warned you of these people, the spiritualist movement. They are still alive and well. They just they get people either fake channel or they get people to channel the wrong thing, as he would put it. He's in full agreement in this. I would be careful with this. This is also a bit of Hollywood at work too.
Right, that's what I mean. It really, because you look at the presentations and how they're put on and whatever, and it does become a little bit of Hollywoodish. That's why it came to my mind, because I'm like, here comes that production.
Yes, have a production, write a story, tell an epic tale if you're trying to make a point about what has happened to you. There's nothing wrong with this.
Right.
That's creativity at work. Don't throw it off the mark. Don't go off the mark into the fantastical where you lose sight of the original objective. You can be epic. Absolutely. They're epic all the time. Look at Star Trek. Look at all these things. Star Wars. Look at it. It's epic. People get it. People got the point of it. Even though there's some yield in there, by the way. But with this, make sure that you don't lose sight of the mark. And here's the most important point. Don't basically show the importance of yourself in that role. Show the importance of what was being seen at that time, the experiences, the importance of telling the history. But don't try to include yourself as I played this role because.
Right.
That is one of the worst things that you can do for your disclosure movement right there. If I could give any advice, never cross that line. Even if other people surpass you because they've crossed it. Never, ever give that much of yourself. I've made this mistake with Clive and the rest of them. He said, well, you got to conform to this and do this and do that. It's fine in your social media where you have to conform it so people see your material. That's different. Don't basically sell your soul to the devil. And I would say this to anyone making fledgling conferences, talks, anybody anywhere inside the movement. What they will do to fledgling conferences is they will try to get more seasoned ones will attempt to try to go, okay, we can't shut this one down, so we'll recreate it in our image so that we can spread into this. Be careful. Anybody having any sort of ideas for conferences or anything, it's not just the one you're at, it's all of them. Be careful. These people are everywhere, and Hollywood does fuel some of this. They will say that there will be someone coming along saying they're from some planet or other, when in fact they were from Hollywood, and Hollywood invented some of that movement, I might add. Like in the early Alien movies and stuff like that, the earlier Plan 9 from outer space, and all those, that interest in that area. Your government, CIA, brought it over to Hollywood, and then they took it from there. Basically saying, we wish to continue on with this, and this is part of your 100 years disclosure narrative too, but I'm not saying aliens aren't there, I'm not saying these experiences aren't happening. That's the thing. Some of those experiences are fabricated by on high, so to speak, but then you have the real ones that are being kind of covered over. Some of the genuine experiences, and just like people saying your programs, he's wanting to put this out. You don't know what's a psyops, you don't know what's dis or misinformation because you're beginning to remember something. You might be remembering something, you might be remembering the thing that they want you to remember what's the word I can do? Overemphasize on it, if you get my meaning.
No, I do. And I guess, I just, like I said, just things have been happening and we've been seeing some things. And again, it's like, wow, it's right here in your face. Not everybody can see it, but it's right here.
I love the phrase he came up with, shills be shilling.
Right.
Love it.
So
that
true.
Could not be any better of a phrase. They also, the community says that normies be norming, but that's kind of insulting, sort of. It's basically, this you got to watch too, denigrating an entire class of people because they have no interest in what you're saying.
Right. And you know what? And a lot of those people that have no interest in what we're saying, were they themselves pulled into the secret space program, did a 20 and back, and had a horrible time of it. And for some reason, because they don't remember it, they're a normie, but they were as much used as abused, as you. It's really weird. It's a weird thing that happens here, where if you remember, you're part of a club, but if you don't and you're not interested, you know what? That infrastructure took millions and millions and millions of souls to build. And so a lot of them aren't going to remember anything. And I personally say sometimes good for them, because it's not this pleasant thing.
Now, where what your disclosure movement is trying to say with the word normie, they're meaning people that cause program disruptions in someone who's awake's life, is really what they're actually equating this to. Basically, somebody that's not awake telling somebody that is awake what's up and what is that. In some cases, just somebody that has no interest and doesn't want to look at it, but then they're programmed to not mind their own business. It's your Mr. Smith programming garbage that's going out there. But there's a bunch of arrays of doing things. Your actual bad guys are the shills. That whole shills be shilling. Love it. That should be on a t-shirt somewhere, because that is what is going on. They are shills for your 3-letter agencies in Hollywood. Pure and simple.
Right. Well, thank you. And I'm just, for some reason, I was very compelled to bring that into this particular discussion because it is its own form of Hollywood.
Oh, you
You know?
bet. But sometimes it's worse in some areas. It's a disclosure movement. It's very fractured. Yes, there were other people that came in, like your dodos. You don't want to name him, but and then you had your aviary groups and stuff like that. You had all of these. Well, actually, Dodie is actually a well-known name, but this people have spoken out a number of times. I'm being told it's safe to say this. I wouldn't say it too loudly, too many times, but yes, came in, fractured your UFO community. Other ones like your Corey did as well, and others did as well. The only reason we're name dropping is because other people said it first already. There has been an unlocking of this. It is safe to do so. So, and with Diddy, it's even safe to say his name because he's sitting in a courtroom, basically brooding at the moment. But what I am saying is, your community is so fractured, it needs reunification, not forced reunification or unification. It needs reunification, and it needs to come together. Not no, he always says things are returning back to your 80s and 90s. Without the updated information, the updated information needs to stay to where you know about all these shills. You know about these. If I have to say the whole shills be shilling a number of times, I will. But at this point, your community is one of the most fractured out there because it has been infiltrated on a number of different levels, not just one, multiple levels. From those that form other conferences out there, I'm not saying yours, I'm saying those that form them in other places get infiltrated immediately, or the ones that already have one will make a shill company to form a separate one to make it look like it's separate too. So that's another area of shieldom. There we go. Hashtag shieldom. That's their kingdom is shieldom. So if anything, there. But that is what's going on. Again, three-letter agency, Hollywood.
Right. So just a couple more questions.
Mm.
There was I guess a lot of talk over, there was a moment in time where you handed on another singer, young singer, Brandy, a note, and it was caught, I guess, on film, but no one's ever talked about what was in that note.
Mm.
As some people say, it was just something personal, not really worth talking about. Is there anything you want to say about that particular time?
Yes. It was more of a cry for help. I was passing a note also to basically, how can I put this? I was not groomed, so to speak, in that area to be a handler like Bobby was. But passing a message over to other areas of Hollywood, but it was also a cry for help, so to speak, because others would see this. I wanted others to see me do this. The message was more kind of like how your Trump was with the series of envelopes that time, passing them out.
Right at the funeral.
Mm-hmm. It was very similar. He was basically saying what family would be in ascendance. This was more like something similar. How can I put this? Okay, I'll be as simple as I can. Yes, there was a cry for help in there, but passing a message to her from another party, meaning they were trying to handle her. I myself was not a handler, but it's like what happened with Michael and other parties. Did he get into the manipulative mode? Yes. And I started a little bit into that myself. So handing that to her, it was more of a warning from those that gave me the envelope.
Okay.
So because she was starting to not play the game, you see. That was my mistake. That's what that was.
And were there any people that maybe could have been a really positive influence in your life that the handlers that may have reached out to you that the handlers really kept you from? Did those types of things happen? Or was pretty much everyone involved in it?
Everyone was involved, but there were others that were not part of Hollywood that were old friends, like from people from childhood of that nature. I ended up getting separated from a lot of those people over a period of time, and it was unfortunately by choice. Just like you hear stories of like other celebrities breaking free from some not breaking free, but not communicating with friends anymore, forgetting where they came from, things of that nature. A lot of it's rumor and conjecture, like they said, Ryan Reynolds did this, or The Rock did that, or something like that. And you see a lot of articles online that say one thing and another one says another thing. It's Hollywood basically trying to convolute or muddy the waters, so you don't know what's true. Lucas started this with Star Wars with his Blue Harvest thing, but that whole thing where now you don't know what ends up is about a show or a movie until you see the show or movie. This is what goes on in that community. But people forget where they came from after a while, and they don't call their old friends anymore. They get the big head, or him and his father say they've gone Hollywoody. He remembers meeting a friend of Sean Bean's one time that said the same thing. He was I never knew the guy, but this was also there was some rumor and conjecture around that side as well. People do when they get into Hollywood, they get the big head and they forget where they came from. And then they go back where they came from and they refine them in some cases. In his case, it was the same in that. And I will say, your game industry will be one of the first to change a lot of this. A friend of his is having troubles in this area, where the game industry will be the first to change and go into a balanced state. Unfortunately, unless you guys change this, the disclosure area will be the last. Your paranormal communities will be the last. Unless you change this, unless the collective will of the people changes this. Just like you were told ages ago, I see in his mind, that the dream realm would be the last to be conquered. That is only because it was like that in that particular timeline and space. You can make it the first if you honor your dream space and force the bad guys to honor your dream space. You say dream time revocation, but it's also about intention as well. I'm seeing this in his own mind. My human self would not have known about these things. I'm starting to get more reintegrated. But do you have anything else for me?
Well, since you're talking about getting reintegrated, I think one of the interesting questions, now that we understand a little more from like even Michael's experience, where there was still trauma and different things to be dealt with, even though he went over to the other side, and that you're saying his oversoul kind of kept him still a little bit apart to do what needed to be done to be able to come in and balance properly.
Yes.
So what?
This is why Ragnar kept poking fun at him and basically calling him the diddler and all this other stuff to get him to have an emotional reaction to trigger that very thing, to trigger that emotion, to trigger the reintegration process, and it worked.
So what about you then? What was it like for you? Obviously, you passed away in the bathtub.
Mhm.
How long did it take you? You're standing there now looking at yourself, oh my gosh, I'm gone. Or did you not? I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, what was your process to get to where you are right now?
I stood there, not, how can I say this where it makes sense? I didn't really recognize that as myself. I knew I had died, but I wondered who what this thing was face down in the water. It's like it didn't matter. But yet I was still ghost. It was really weird. It was a disorientation. I knew I had died. But did I remember how I got face down in the water? Yes and no. It was confusion at first. But then it all started to come together, and I knew I had been OD'd. And I wandered the house. It took them a second to check on me and my daughter, to check on me. But at that point, then I started to, how can I put this, gain more perspective. And I wandered and watched those for a while. You could call it a haunting, I suppose, but that's more of a dramatic paranormal term, but it's still apt. But the moment that this happened, was I thinking, oh my God, I'm dead? It wasn't quite like that. It was more like, who's this? Face down. And, oh yeah, that's me. I'm dead. It was like that. It was more of a shock value. Not like this over exuberance, like, oh my God, I died. Some do that. Some die in their sleep and then wonder why nobody can see them. And some just haunt and some cause problems, as you know. But me, it was more like, who is this? And then the recognition kicked in.
And then the process of crossing over for you, I mean, did you wonder, in I'm just gonna say in our term of what time is, did you wander for a while? How did you then move on? Because I think that's a big question that in general people have because they're afraid, right? And they're afraid of, God forbid you're afraid of hell. I hate to say that.
We already went through it. There's not that over here.
Right.
So.
But I mean, you're wandering around as a ghost for a while. What is it that had you then, move yourself to
Recognition and basically coming to terms with what had taken place, that I was actually this sacrifice. I had to sit on that for a little while. I even sat in my home for a while, even after other people owned it. I sat there and I started to come to terms with what took place. That's what ends up having to happen. You have to come to terms with what took place, even if it was a murder like that. Also, there had to be justice served for this. There was a shade that I left behind. What a shade is, he calls it like a wraith or a negative emotion. He says your Witcher could turn this into like a monster form in the game sequence where it was separate from the soul. It was more of a wraith. It was separate. It was just of the pain. That's what you were feeling when I approached, was that. Because I was showing this off to you. And I do apologize for the denseness, because it was how I felt. But with that, after I shed that, then I began to move on. Then, after, of course, by the time, I passed, of course, Michael already had a few years before, about 4 years before. And him and I walked together for a while. We talked for a little bit and then he wandered off and I started to integrate more. And by you getting rid of that shade completely today, Spirit has a funny way of realigning things, realigning the lens. Getting rid of that shade, I'm now speaking to you as more of you say higher self or oversoul. There is actually a different name that you wouldn't comprehend at the moment. For all these things you say, omniverse, super omniverse, multiverse, universe, or the exegetical tree, you're saying things like this, but there are terms for these things you wouldn't be able to comprehend, and information involved in this that the human mind cannot comprehend until you cross into this form. Even though there is a version of you always there and you're not really crossing, so to speak, you are bringing with you, reeling in some of the avatar's information, and you are reforming that in that image there, just like Frank Frazetta did. He sends his regards too. Perfectly wonderful man, wonderful man. Like any guy, he likes tits, but okay. He's a guy. Let's just put it that way. Wonderful man. Yes, I know, Frank, you like asses too. Thank you. And I knew you were standing over there like a creeper in the corner. Yes, but I'm kidding. You're wonderful. But I will say that I only wish you could write about an experience like that you could put pen to paper, because it's weird. It's a weird experience. All of a sudden you die. And then you're standing next to your body, not remember recognizing it. I just saw the back of my head with the hair floating. And I was creeped, but at the same time, not knowing. Very odd experience. I do never have to go through that again. I had other lifetimes though where I died in various ways, and some were warriors, some were philosophers. This one, I was more your Kabbalists out there wanted to slate me for sacrifice in that way, because there was other ritual sacrifices also that happened in other lifetimes. One was Aztec and Mayan, and the other one was being, having the heart ripped out, kind of thing. Other ones were, and there was plenty of those. Other ones were more church related, and other ones were lower caste in a society where I wasn't allowed to speak. I wasn't allowed to perform, do like any sort of artistic venue or anything I wanted to ever do, and that was what that lifetime was. There was no happy ending to that one. My soul wanted to change that. But then you have the others out there that then mark you for wanting to be free of that have long memories, those from that period, that set that whole thing up. And I know you guys know this, but to be more simplify, Evie as Whitney Houston, it was strange. It was strange being in that form. And any of you listening, you all are going to experience this one day. Not hopefully in the way that I've said of that happened to me, but you will experience death and transition. Make sure when you hit that time that you die well, and for who you are, and not who you're not. Do not give away anything of your soul, because in the end you're still going to eventually die. It's just, did you die well? In my case, no, but that realization came after the fact.
And so in your process, you can reflect on even that now because you're at a different place.
Yes.
So when you look at that process, that obviously lasted for multiple years, right, before moving to where you are now.
Yeah, I was around my daughter until she passed too. So
yeah, so you were there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that you were never, in a sense, lost to your oversoul. Even though you were still processing everything in what you had been through before moving fully back to yourself was a part of the process that needed to occur.
Yes, others fight this, and they get stopped in their dark night of the soul, and that's where demons get them. But or they get coupled with demons, like your Freddy Krueger type concept or something like that. And those are the really sad cases, because souls are lost in those cases, or you have just demon consciousness, and then you have souls that are coupled into that. It's very sad cases that happens with. It always starts with something that's undealt with, or something that is a wound that's pried open.
Right.
A heart that maybe either bled too much and gave too much of themselves, or didn't function at all.
Right. And so again, but going through a process, people should not be afraid of.
No, look at those dark corners of yourself. Look at them.
Right. And also, if for some reason you do not just jump to the highest part of yourself, but need a little bit of transition, I guess what I'm saying is that the vast majority of people, they're not alone in this process. You weren't alone. Your oversoul had not lost you.
You're never alone. There's always that higher part of yourself, but there are others that also cheer you on in that process. Now, are some ghosts wandering and lost? Yes. And do they have to then be reconnected? Yes. But there's a lot of those cases, but that's also being resolved even as I'm speaking now.
Right, because I think that this conversation would lead to a lot of conversations that or fears that would really scare people. But sometimes it's needed, but you're really You're not lost to yourself. It is just a process that
And
occurs.
he saw a show once where there was a woman that was saying that it was on your dead files. Your Amy Allen was talking about a woman who was not like she was in life. She was more dark. That's what the concept I was talking about before. When they were reconnected, they didn't know why, again, they were acting that way because they were being drifted further away from their own light.
Right.
And transforming into something like in your Ghostbusters, where there's mutated ghosts and things of that nature, and that does happen. That does happen on your earthly or Midgardian plane. It does happen quite a bit.
Right.
But it's the nature of the dimension you happen to find yourself in.
But knowing that all of this exists before you even die, would, in my opinion, and you can tell me if you agree from where you are, that it certainly makes the process a whole lot easier when you have a bigger perspective like we're
Yeah,
talking
when you're
about.
educated in this, it's far less likely that will ever happen. It didn't happen to me, but I did see things as I wandered a little bit that made me think and go, oh my, wow, some people had it worse. Even though ritual sacrifice and all, some souls had it much worse in experiences or experiential reality. And it was not palatable to me. I never wanted that to happen to myself, and it never did. Except for this whole shade experience where it was separate. Like he's saying there was a case in a video game he played where there was a guy that was possessed that murdered his wife, and then the wife had a shade and then had the real soul because it was a demon that was responsible there. But and those are though that does happen, especially in Hollywood. It's Hollywood for a reason. I would highly recommend steering clear of there for a little while in that area for just a little while longer. Not just because of the riots, but just a while. And I recommend anybody just give it a minute, and you're going to see a different area after a while. So, do you have anything else for me?
No. Of course, any last words you'd like to say for this particular conversation?
If I again have to say anything, do not give of yourself. Do not take away that core essence that is you. Just like he was reminded with the man that had died, walking away from something like that, that isn't always an option. Just because you are tired and you are worn, you must keep a core value intact. He even saw this in a video game, your Cyberpunk 2077, where he had a character. There was a character that said that had a core. You have to have a core value that you circle back around to a code. That was actually a good thing they put in this. Even if things go horribly wrong and you have to reset, it's a core code that you circle back around to. You must have this. You don't have to go full on Christian religious. You don't have to be valueless. You must find this. You must find this. And for curiosity's sake, I'm pulling things out of his subconscious. That he has an enormous file cabinet of what people would think is junk in here. It's more like a set of file cabinets that have different pop culture references in it from anything he's ever seen gets stored in this database. And he wonders why he has no peace. At times. Not it's all the time. But people that have photographic memories like this, they remember all these things. And this works for reference. But there are times where some of those references belong in the realms they were created in. And then in speaking the words, you must speak it in a way of soul with bullet point references, if this makes sense. I pulled this out of his file cabinet, but do not give up again. Do not give up your core self. This is what I was trying to say. Have a code, circle you back around to your core values, always, no matter what that is. So I thank you for the opportunity. This has resolved a lot for myself as well. So I thank you. Yes, and she is correct. I have a whole file cabinet in my head of all these pop culture references, and the one that I was asking her to make reference to was the Witcher 3 Game of the Year edition Wild Hunt, Hearts of Stone. And so, people want to look that reference up, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. So, I have all this stored in my head because I over the years have regimented my brain to remember things that were created in different frequencies. Because if you're in a certain frequency, frequency is memory, memory is frequency, like we've said before. If you remember something in said frequency, you won't remember it in another one. Then I always make the Fantasy Island reference where the daughter leaves. She doesn't remember when Rourke summons her back to the island. She remembers. That is a beautiful reference for that. I'm the same way where I have to remember the pop culture references because I don't always remember the other frequency reference, but I remember where I saw it. And so this is what she is referring to. I remember where I saw it, then it triggers the rest of the material. So if people want to know how to remember certain things in other frequencies, look for the references they put in stuff. Then it should take you back to that other point because it's a frequency reference back to its other point. So this is why they pull that out of my head for that reason. So we're at the end of this, and let's see. I don't know if you have anything else to add here. And before I actually forget the last affirmation and blessing here, I will actually say this. This was another Robin Williams one. This was actually pretty good. To say that I am born of madness, I say to those of you that do, I say, yes, yes, I am. I proudly bear it, as should all of you. And channeling of comedian and actor Robin Williams. So maybe we'll have Robin Williams come in here at some point too on one of these shows. I've talked to him before. Great guy. So tragic and great guy though. So I now close this circle within true benevolence and no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now. Okay, I forgot to say what fugglers were. Fugglers are funny, ugly monsters that will worm your heart and take over your life with their mischievous antics and straight-up bonkers appearance. Each fugler is out to cause chaos wherever they go. You can recognize these creepy creatures with their human-like teeth, vacant eyes, disturbing demeanor, and distinctive button hole. Say, fugler.com. Fugler. Funny, ugly monster. You see in the wording, mischievous antics, contract, and they're basically dead little creatures, kind of like, there's also puckwudgies and other creatures like that too, but that could inhabit something like this. So, and take over your life with their mischievous antics. It's all in the wording, guys. It's on fugler.com, right on their front page. So, I wanted to put that on there. So, it's 8:49 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday, June 21st, 2025. Thank you. Isaac wanted me to put Fugler is fucking ugly monster instead of funny ugly monster. Just saying. So, it is 8:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday, June 21st, 2025. Thank you. Oh my, remember when I said there was head pressure before? Also was what we said, unbelievable pressure. My mother and Laverne said that the forest people were around, and during the channeling, when Whitney was talking about never compromise or anything like that, or the part where she would turn around and look, there was a tap on the side of the house. There was a rock that hit. The forest people were around, basically confirming what she was saying. So yeah. So it is. First I figured maybe warning, but no, confirmation. The channelings are more potent because today's the solstice, 21st summer solstice. So, or what's left of it. I left some questions for Whitney at the end because she preferred to bring them out this way, like George did, Joan did, George Carl and Joan Rivers. But I've gotten in the ugly habit as I had to actually answer them the moment I see them, and it's like a obsessive compulsive. But yeah, I want to show you this sign here. This spot, it says here. Joanna had to put that on the wall to
make sure my brain registered that it didn't have to be answered right away. I got those questions this morning. I left them for this evening, so, for the time of the recording anyway. So I'll leave it here. If that's what you have to do to get an OCD thing out of your brain, do it. Absolutely 100% you have to tell your brain not to do it. That's what wards, revocations, and audits do too. They tell the brain it's factual, like writing a list of all your things you want. You write them down, manifestation list. You put it in what we call a wish box, but a central place, an altar space, essentially. So, or designated cornerstone. And what a cornerstone is like an altar space of a property, not for worship, but for protection, but also focus. And then a year later, take the notes out of that box, or you have them under a candle on altar space. Then you read them a year later and see what came true. You'll find that most of them did. If they didn't, it's because the oversoul is wanting to do something else, or spirit is needing something else to happen. Just like in the house that we lived in Granville 3 days, and I told you about the cops were called to me for the disturbance. And the neighbor, it's because I had a karmic dispute with that neighbor that had, or what you would call that, it was a past life thing that had to be worked out. I wanted peaceful everything for that house, but it was something the soul needed to get help on. Whereas, it was sometimes not always what you want, it's what you need. And yes, a disturbance thing was created out of that, because we got in, it was an argument. I got locked out of the house. She called the cops over something stupid, but she was remembering me from somewhere else. Even approaching her in the street, getting the mail, she was looking at me with panic. It's because she was seeing something else from somewhere else, and I resolved that cycle. But it had nothing to do with current me. It was past life me. So, came to find out it was I was a nastier me in another lifetime, where it was a queen that I basically killed some family members of hers because she was in an arranged marriage, and I wanted to be with her, and she's like, I can't do it because, so got rid of the family line, and she ended up becoming an angry queen in history. I'm thinking it's Elizabeth I, or one like her, but I'm thinking it's in the same family line. It's 9:16 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday, June 21st, 2025. Thank you.
Hello. I had a strange dream that I believe to be either past life or an ancestral memory. This may explain a few emotions recently. I'll explain further. This was set, I would have to say, possibly in the 16 or 1700s, maybe later. And there was this young woman, had very much like the appearance of, like, say, Keira Knightley in appearance. Was possibly maybe 5'6", 5'7" in height. Wasn't overly tall, but wasn't like a midget either. Had lighter brown hair, short, like you saw her in, not in the Pirates movies because it was long then, but after V for Vendetta, after she had shaved her head, no, that wasn't Keira Knightley, that was Natalie Portman. The way Natalie Portman looked in after V for Vendetta, when the hair was cut short, and also Keira Knightley in a role she played where she had to shorten her hair as well. The kind of in that realm of appearance. The differences, or if you put the two of them together, in facial features and everything. Anyway. Apparently this past life of mine was, in love with this girl, and had possibly grown up around this woman. And she was called on to be royalty. I don't know if it was like a Queen Elizabeth type situation where another
part of the family died or abdicated or what. Like when Edward abdicated and Queen Elizabeth's line had to take over. Her father to take over. He died, and then she became queen. But what had occurred was something similar to that, and she was a young queen. I'm thinking 19. I'm thinking she was 19, and I was possibly a little older, maybe in my 20s. But I had a good amount of power myself. Like I had worked in the background doing things with an advisor, a group of people, like how a revolutionary group would be. And she didn't know this part. And then another, like some of her family and another royal family wanted some guy to intermarry into the family. And he was a cocky little bastard. I remember that. So basically I was phased out. And somebody advised her to take to do her duty over love. And that basically axed me out. But this guy ended up being very abusive towards her. And I have this memory of trying to meet her up on like a part of a castle or something like that, and saying she had to be with this person. The families demanded it. And I said, no, you don't have to. Typical story. Well, I noticed that she had bruises on her. Of where he was abusing her. And I don't know if the next sequence of events, I saw she had been committed to a sanitarium, which they sent everybody to sanitariums at some point in those old days. For anything medical, it was a one-stop shop. And he was going to try to have her committed so he could take over as king and flex his power muscles. But then I realized I had more than him with my underground group of misfits. And this next part, I'm not quite sure if it was more of a fantasy of that particular incarnation or if this actually happened. It actually happened, I'm being told. Okay. Where several months went by and I couldn't stand her being abused by this guy, so we broke into wherever the palace was and abducted him. But first it was we went after his family. We went after like the elders. Like his father or grandfather was kind of like a Lord Mountbatten type figure of how Lord Mountbatten would be like to Charles or Philip or something like that. Kind of like in that realm of family lineage. Well, they went first. The grandparents went first. They just disappeared. They became missing people. Then the descendants. They weren't children, but they were older. They were maybe, well, I don't think he was in his 20s. I think he was much older than she was. Like he was in his 40s or something like that. 40s or mid-40s, something like that. And she was 19. And then his descendants and other family were taken out. And then he was grabbed in the middle of the night and then told what had happened, told that justice and honor was being bestowed on him, the typical. And then he was killed and vanished. Well, she got wind of what I had done and became very angry and bitter, thought I was barbaric for doing it, not the same person she grew up around.
and then she elected to stay alone and became a very bitter and angry queen. She ruled well, but became bitter and angry because of it. And I was I'm not quite sure what happened, if she had me killed for what I had done. But the people's favor for this other boob dwindled. It's like he was forgotten from history. He was wiped completely from history. Maybe in some latent way he remained, like in pictures or something like that. But I just knew he had to be wiped from history. Like I had this abnormal amount of power. Like I had this, like I had this whole underground group that was willing to follow me, that were more than willing to take this person out and his family. They didn't hesitate to follow the order. They believed in it. They were a cause. And I don't know if that ended up ending the cause because they struck out against royalty. Oh, I'm being told, yes, that possibly I died before that, but I just know she became an angry queen because she had to, her royal duty dictated that, the people dictated that we die, even though they didn't know about the whole abuse situation. They didn't know, and she didn't explain it to them, which she could have very well done. So there was a sense of betrayal there, and some of the emotions of someone else taking over a relationship and the person going along with it. I don't know if this was an incarnation of Joanna or someone else. I just don't know. I feel this was like someone else and it just got transposed to nowadays, because there were these weird emotions coming up, and it ended up being another lifetime. It was a strange dream, but I also had another thing spliced in. This was equally as weird. That was more normal compared to the next thing. I saw myself standing atop a stadium, sniping somebody down, was further down, either in the field. I saw a bunch of like robotic beings or something in the field and in the stands, and I was sniping them with a sniper rifle. That, I believe, was SSP. I believe that this was drifting between past life and SSP because it's a similar energy string with similarly generated emotions. That one kind of flowed into the other. And they were robotic beings that were following the players around and following the coaches and some of the fans. Not all the fans, but some of them. But I think I was instructed to take out these, whatever these were, around the players themselves. It reminds me of an old video game that existed in the old arcades back in the 80s and 90s. That was a sniper game that one of the hardest levels was taking out the other sniper that was in the stadium, sort of thing. I think it was just called Sniper, or Sniper Shot, or Dead Shot. I don't remember the name of it, but I was always drawn to that one, even though I got frustrated with it that I couldn't do it. But that reminds me of that. And it's an old game. You can't find it anymore. You can hardly find it anymore. It's rare. It's one of those big arcade machines. But anyway, I believe that was the assignment to actually go and snipe these. I think I was on the quote-unquote white hat side, if you heard my rant on YouTube about both sides putting people in danger. The heroes of the people and the villains of the people. But this was actually interesting. The whole love story one. I noticed that when I woke up, I was like, "What?" And I noticed that the last time I encountered this queen, she was very awkward around me. She wasn't loving. Went to kiss her on the forehead or the lips, and she was very cold. And that was before she revealed she'd found out what I'd done. And I said that was for us and for the cause and everything. That she should have just ended that with him. And it was just her parents had brainwashed her into thinking that duty took over, and when the two sides could have been melded. She was too young to figure out that you could have melded both sides. I felt like I was older, like I was closer to the other guy's age. I may have not been mid-20s. It was more like maybe mid-30s. And I felt I had more experience in the area. And she didn't listen. And I feel like I was killed by her because, of course, she was in charge. But I had the feeling I had the ability to come and go as I wanted. Like I had full autonomy. Like she tolerated what I was doing for only so long. Until I turned on that guy, even though he was the abuser. It was more like a Stockholm syndrome sort of thing, where she was getting used to that being around. Like she tolerated it, and one day she was going to oust him herself. But I was impatient and wouldn't wait for it. And then him and his family on both ends died. So I don't know what country this was from. The architecture of the castle was kind of tall and slender, so I'm beginning to think more Austria, Germany, Hungary. But at the same time, it had more of the influences of I want to say France or I don't want to say Spain, but it's more like France. It had like a mix. So I'm not. It leaned more towards architecture-wise, more Austrian, German, but the outfits were wrong. That went more towards French or European, other parts of Europe, and so that's why it's confusing. The architecture and clothes were a mix. So that's I acknowledge that this is real at this current point in time, and I ground this information into the benevolent earthly Akash and the benevolent galactic Akashes as of this moment in time. Mirrored across time and space where appropriate, it is forever so in all moments and in all sessions, and I can feel my energy clearing as a result. So I believe I'm done with that. So it is 8:18 on April 22nd, Wednesday, 2020. Thank you.